You know that old saying, you never get a second chance with a first impression? Well, I'm going to take that to heart and do a first impression review of this new Corvette. Now, as you can see, they've given it to us in a really discreet colour. I think it's called Accelerate Yellow. Door handle must be under here somewhere. Okay, so the door handle there. Just check, yep, it is a Corvette Stingray. Let's, oh, something coming up on the screen there. Oh, it's a little animation of a Corvette. Nice, nice. We'll get it out of the dealership here and then we can start to, yeah, talk about it a bit more. Right, let's get this thing going. Ooh, what a nice sound. Gear lever. So pull back for drive, yep. It's got a electric handbrake. So little dab on throttle and we're away, ladies and gentlemen. Funny thing is, I'm moving house very soon. Most journos tend to try and schedule something like a Ranger or a Hilux or something like that, or a van to help their moves. But it just happens to be that I've probably got one of the least practical cars for moving gear in this Corvette. But I thought, well, these are the sort of challenges that life throws at you, aren't they? So I just want to see how the Corvette functions as a daily driver. So the first thing I've got to do, funnily enough, is to go and pick up a suitcase. It's quite a nice feel. It's special. It certainly feels special. It's nice and responsive to the handlebars here. Really darts nicely, beautiful, like that. Okay, I've got my suitcase. Seems reasonably large, but apparently I'm not sure that it'll be compliant with all the airline regulations. Now, I've got my Corvette here. Can you see that? Yeah. I know that there's a boot in the back here. Try and get the suitcase in. So I put the suitcase in. Fits in that way, no worries, but she's not going to fit in height-wise. So here we go. That seems, yeah, right at home. Got to have coffee, of course. That's part of the daily routine. Yeah, it's got cup holders. I mean, it's an American car, so I imagine they'd prioritise the cup holders pretty well. You do run out of room quite quickly inside here if you've got a big suitcase in the passenger seat. Rear 3/4 visibility. What's that? But we do have a very good rear view camera. Okay, enough of the silly business. Let's get down to some raw facts and statistics. This is the Corvette Stingray C8, 8th generation. Available as a coupe, which is what we have here, with a removable roof panel, or it's a convertible. Corvette Stingray 3LT. The 3LT means it's kind of like the higher spec. It's all leather, you've got the head-up display, you've got your Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, electric seats, heated and cooled for both driver and passenger. You know, really well specified. It's $169,900 for the coupe that we're in. Now the great thing about this C8 Corvette is it's the first time that the Corvette has been available as a factory right-hand drive. So it's built in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is where all Corvettes have been made since the day Adam was just going to preschool. And of course the big news with the C8 is that the engine is not up there where it's always been since the day dot. It's back here, mid-engine. Now why have they gone to a mid-engine, you might ask? You may not, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The reason they've gone to a mid-engine is not only does it sit in with the original philosophy of the Corvette Stingray as a mid-engine car, but it simply comes down to traction. They can't get the rear wheels to take the power of these V8 engines now without having more weight over those rear wheels. So what they've done is put the engine in the rear, so 60% of the total weight of the car is sitting over that back axle, which is where it's needed if you're going to get that power to the ground through just those two wheels. The sheer need for traction like that requires it to have more weight over the back. Motive power is provided by a small block Chevy V8. It's aluminium in construction, 6.2 litres, dry sump lubed. It's a 2-valve per cylinder type engine, so it's not particularly high spec in terms of that, but it does have cylinder deactivation for fuel management. So sometimes you'll find the car is running, you know, when it's in gentle mode, it's running as a V4, and when it needs that extra power for quick getaways or overtaking, or just because you want to make more noise, you'll see the V4 sign goes away on the dash and it's replaced by a V8 sign. So it's quite a clever engine. It's actually reasonably fuel efficient too. This car has been running now on this trip computer for 1500 Ks, and it's averaging 14.5 litres per 100 kilometre, which is okay, because I imagine a lot of those 1500 Ks is running around town like I'm doing right now. So it's quite a sophisticated little engine, 6.2 litres. Develops 369 kilowatts and 637 newton meters. The 637 newton meters come at about 5,500 RPM. So, well, yeah, it's nice that it's sitting behind you, I've found, because there's a real immediacy to that power transmission from just behind you to the rear tyres sitting straight below it. So it's a very kind of focused and taut feeling vehicle. 8-speed transmission. It's no manual now, so it's the first time there's been no manual available in the Corvette since 1953-54, because in the C1, the first Corvette, there was no manual transmission either. And also in the C3 of the early 80s, there was also no manual offered. But yeah, no manual transmission, just this 8-speed dual clutch transmission, which I've found is pretty good. It's pretty good. It's pretty nice at low speed maneuvers where dual clutch transmissions often stumble and shudder. I have noticed the occasional little bit of shift shock, usually in sport or track mode, where the transmission is providing more urgent shifts. But in tour mode, look, it could be a torque converter automatic for all I know. You've also got sport, track, and a my mode type thing where you can adjust the parameters that the mode button affects according to your likes and store them under your own personal setting. Well, we're in track now, so you can hear it's a little bit more vocal maybe. The things that it changes: steering weight, brake feel, throttle response, shift pattern on the transmission too. Also has magnetic ride control, so you've got adjustable suspension in terms of its responsiveness to road imperfections. I found the suspension's pretty good, pretty good. It's a taut car, look, no doubt about it. It's very firmly sprung. As I come down this driveway here, I'm just gonna lift the car up, because it's got a hydraulic raise on the front, which brings the nose up a few crucial millimeters so you don't grind off the bottom of your splitter. And once you get to 30 kilometers an hour, it drops it back down again. I found it's pretty good actually. It raises the car in about 4-5 seconds. It will actually remember where you've programmed to do a lift in the past, and when you come down that same road or that same driveway again, it'll remember that and lift it up for you. So isn't that clever? A little bit of axle tramp there. The cars that we get in Australasia, or certainly in New Zealand here, are all Z51 specifications. So it's got the performance exhaust, it's got the performance E limited slip diff, it's got the performance final drive ratios, it's got the big brakes, it's got the big cooling system. It's fully spec'd. You're gonna wanna know about tyres, because I think you're gonna be buying a few of them, particularly rears. Staggered wheel set on here, 19s on the front, 20s on the back. The 20s on the back at 11.5 inches wide. Tyres, 245 35 19s up front and 305 30 20s on the back. In fact, when I was looking at the tyre spec, they're Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, by the way, there's only just enough sidewall height on the rear tyres to actually get all the legal and marketing descriptions of the tyres on there, because it's just such a thin tyre. Braking is by Brembo. You've got 4-piston calipers, 2-piece calipers up front and monoblocks out the back. They're massive, really huge, and they're actually larger on the rear than on the front, which is kind of unusual actually, but I guess that speaks to the mid-engine arrangement. Plenty of brake feel, lots of ability to modulate the brake. As I say, that braking effort can be adjusted through your drive mode selection, and with your individual setting you can adjust that brake feel to be just the way you want it when you're pulling up outside the dairy to get that milk. Well, you only get one chance of this each day, but it's well worth the wait. The glorious cold start. So now out on twisty roads that are wet, this is when the Corvette really comes into its own in terms of its balance. It's just hugely reassuring to drive a very high-powered V8, basically supercar, on this sort of terrain, these sort of conditions. Got a very vocal V8. I'm now in track mode, so I'm getting all the noise that I can get from the V8, and I'm really enjoying it, There's a button on the side of the steering hub here which says Z, and that's basically a shortcut to all the high performance aspects of the vehicle. So that's the quicker throttle response, the more aggressive shift points on the transmission, the heavier weight steering, you know, the brake balance is set up to be a bit more, well, I guess track focused. So you're getting all the Corvette Stingray that it can offer just by pushing this one button. Some cars that are as powerful as this, and sometimes even more powerful, don't have the pedigree that you feel you can really trust yourself to go quickly in, because they feel a little bit tender in their balance. This thing is very communicative. It's telling me everything that I want to know when I want to know it, and you know, I can push on, as I say, on greasy roads that are windy. I'm not particularly familiar with them, so it's given me the reassurance to drive briskly but safely, and that's a huge recommendation for a car of this power. Well, while we're here, we better do one of these 0 to 100 things that we sometimes do. I've got a performance timer on the dashboard here. It says accelerate to start. So I've got it in track mode. I'm not doing anything else in terms of launch control. I'm just going to give it some welly and see what it says. So 3, 2, 1. Yeah, well, that's pretty poor. 4.1 seconds, a lot of wheel spin off the line there, then the throttle deadened, the traction control killed the throttle. So 4.1, it's not that good, is it? Not that good. But anyway, very exciting. You could tell that if you thought about it, concentrated, used the launch control tech that it's got on board, that you would do considerably better. I mean, they are quoting a sub 3 second 0 to 100k on this car. I'll take the 4.1 and just live with that. I've become amazingly unaware of the rectangular nature of the steering wheel. I thought it'd be very irritating that, you know, it's not predictably round, but because you're not coming out of corners in opposite lock and letting the wheel sort of self-center and the wheel's going through your hands like that, if you're not doing that, which we're not doing, of course, you don't really notice that it's kind of got these almost vertical sides to them and almost horizontal top and bottom. It's it's actually quite a natural feel. It certainly encourages to keep your hands where you should do at the sort of 2/4 to 3 position. And it's small enough, it's chunky enough, you've got great access and visibility to your shift paddles, and the dashboard instrument display is again clearly framed within the top half of the steering wheel. So it's a really good design actually. I think if it had a round steering wheel, it would just look out of place with the rest of the angular aspects of this vehicle, both interior and exterior, because it is a very angular, sharp, pointy sort of car. So you've got this big air conditioning, heating, ventilation, air conditioning control down the middle of the car here. You can also control air conditioning settings from your touchscreen on here, but this is certainly a dominant design feature. Once you get familiar with it, you'll probably find it less confusing than I'm finding it, but I do have to look across and find which button I'm pushing. So it's got those little vents on either side of the rear window that are open to the outside environment. And it's been raining a lot in the time that I've had this vehicle. And I noticed that the rain comes down and lands inside your engine bay. It actually splashes onto parts of your rear suspension and also onto the rocker covers. For those anal retentives amongst us, that's your Sunday afternoon gone right there, isn't it? Polishing up your engine. I don't do that many car reviews, frankly, because a lot of cars these days just don't do it for me. You know, they're a bit boring, you know, like transport, but not much else. But this thing I knew would be much more than just transport. And yeah, I've used it to do some pretty mundane things. Prepare to move house. I've gone and got the takeaways a couple of times. I've taken kids out at night to parties. I've, you know, done the usual running around town. And it's been surprisingly practical for that. It's short on space, of course. I couldn't get my massive suitcase into the boot, but the boot at the back is specified for 2 sets of golf clubs, and the one at the front is specified for basically a carry-on luggage bag and a medium-sized backpack. So, you know, you can actually get stuff in here and use it as, you know, a pretty practical car for 2 people. It's tractable. It's not temperamental. The engine runs quite cool and quite calmly. It's smooth, it's quiet when it's not under load. You've got your different drive modes, so you can really dial it back. I think it's a pretty good buy, really. Look, it might have the occasional little creak from the interior trim, and it's a General Motors Chevrolet product, but that Corvette badge and that Stingray emblem, they are pretty powerful, and I've had a lot of people come up to me since I've been driving this car and just want to take photos with it, look inside it, you know, talk about it. It just seems to be a very good use of $170,000, because not only does it warm people up and attract people and start conversations, but it actually provides more than just transport. It provides an emotional connection with the driver. If you're in the market to spend $150,000 to $200,000 on a car, there's lots of choices. They're usually German. They're usually either a big, well-equipped sedan or an even bigger SUV. But I think at the end of the day, if you're walking back to your car park after a day in the office, I know what I'd rather walk through the elevator doors to find sitting waiting for me. I'd rather find this than some silver or black SUV that costs the same amount of money. And for me, that's a really good recommendation. This car would continue to move you, not just as transport, but emotionally, you know, spiritually. And I think that's high praise.